The gunshots rang out just as the morning sprinklers kicked on. 2 sharp pops, then silence. My wife Sarah hit the lawn, clutching her side, her morning coffee spreading across the grass like a dark stain. Grandpa Walter dropped beside the tomato plants, shocked, but still cursing in fluent German about crazy American neighbors. Standing on her porch in a matching velour tracksuit and holding a pearl-handled .22 caliber pistol like it was a TV remote. Patricia Sinclair, president of the Pineridge Estates HOA, smirked and muttered something about trespassing ending now. She didn't know her next-door neighbor was Commander Jason Harper, head of the county SAT team. And I had just pulled into the driveway. I'm many things. Military veteran, tactical instructor, husband, grandson, and the only guy on the block who kept his lawn naturally escaped, which HOA Patricia absolutely hated. I bought the corner lot in Pineridge Estates to keep my family close and my job stress at bay. I grilled on weekends, coached t-ball, and politely declined HOA meetings because frankly, I had better things to do with my time. Patricia Sinclair, on the other hand, considered HOA leadership her divine calling. She once cited a toddler for excessive bubble wand use. Her hobbies included binocular surveillance from her living room window and screaming code violation like it was some kind of magical spell. She had long labeled our household as non-compliant, especially after Grandpa Walter built a porch swing without filing what she called a swing feasibility report. Yes, that was actually a real thing she made up. Patricia had moved to Pineridge Estates 5 years ago after her 3rd divorce. Within 6 months, she had manipulated her way onto the HOA board by spreading rumors about the previous president's supposed gambling addiction. By year 2, she was running unopposed because everyone else was too exhausted to deal with her 3-hour meetings about grass height regulations. She kept a color-coded binder system for every household with tabs for current violations, pending violations, and what she called pre-violations, which were things she suspected people might do in the future. Her house sat directly across from ours. A beige monument to conformity with precisely trimmed hedges and a lawn so perfect it looked like artificial turf. She had motion-activated cameras on every corner, a doorbell that announced visitors in 3 different languages, and a flagpole that displayed the HOA banner she had custom-made. The banner featured a gavel surrounded by roses and the motto "Compliance creates community" in Gothic font. The violations had been piling up for months. First, it was improper patriotic flag display because mine had a thin blue line on it. Then came the citation for grandpa loitering while elderly, which I still can't believe was written on official HOA letterhead. The unauthorized aromatics violation referred to Sarah's rosemary planter that apparently violated subsection 12. 3 of the neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. Patricia issued 23 warnings in 2 months, each one more ridiculous than the last. When we ignored her escalating madness, she took matters into her own hands. She placed nails in our driveway, which I discovered when my cruiser got a flat tire at 5 in the morning. She tampered with our mailbox so it wouldn't close properly. She even called animal control on what she described as an aggressive tortoise, which was actually a decorative garden stone. She warned me directly one evening when I was taking out the trash. "This is my neighborhood," she said with a tone that suggested she believed she was royalty. "Officer or not, you will comply with the rules." I laughed. That was apparently my second mistake. My first was buying a house in her kingdom. The confrontations had been escalating for weeks. Patricia started showing up during family gatherings, measuring the volume of our music with a decibel meter she bought specifically for us. She photographed every guest's car and ran their plates through some sketchy online database. She even hired a private investigator to determine if Grandpa Walter was really my grandfather or just what she called an unauthorized long-term resident. 2 weeks before the shooting, she held an emergency HOA meeting specifically about our family. She presented a 45-slide PowerPoint titled The Harper Threat Assessment. It included drone footage of our backyard, photos of Sarah's kindergarten class visiting for a barbecue, which he labeled as an illegal daycare operation, and a detailed analysis of what she called Grandpa Walter's suspicious European behavior patterns. Only 3 people attended the meeting, and 2 of them were her paid assistants. On the day of the incident, Patricia had finally snapped. She claimed Walter was threatening her fence with a rake. In reality, he was just weeding the flower bed that ran along our property line. Sarah had walked over to explain it was just weeding day, speaking in that calm teacher voice she used with difficult students at the elementary school. That's when Patricia pulled the gun. The security footage, which was later leaked to every news outlet in the state, shows her firing while closing her eyes and pulling the trigger like it was a car horn. She missed vital organs only through sheer incompetence and bad aim. What she didn't expect was me stepping out of my SUV, instantly assessing the situation, calling for medical backup, and barking orders that made even her yapping chihuahua sit down and shut up. My training kicked in immediately. Combat medic experience from Afghanistan, 15 years of SWAT operations, countless active shooter drills. I had my trauma kit out and was applying pressure to Sarah's wound within seconds while simultaneously coordinating the emergency response on my radio. Walter was conscious but in shock, muttering in German about American gun laws. Patricia stood frozen on her porch, still holding the weapon like she couldn't quite process what she had just done. "Drop the weapon now," I commanded in my command voice, the one that had made hardened criminals comply without question. Patricia's hand shook as she set the gun on her porch railing. "Do not move. You are under arrest for attempted murder." The transformation on her face was something to behold. The smug superiority melted away, replaced by the dawning realization that she had just shot 2 people in broad daylight in front of a SWAT commander. Within minutes, 6 SWAT officers, a K-9 unit, 2 ambulances, and the county sheriff were on site. The quiet Saturday morning in Pine Ridge Estates had turned into a crime scene. Patricia tried claiming self-defense while waving the gun around like she was conducting an orchestra. I presented body cam footage from my vehicle, home surveillance from 3 different angles, and statements from 3 neighbors who had witnessed the entire event from their driveways. Then came the kicker. Patricia's phone seized on scene as evidence contained text messages to her sister that read, and I quote, "I'm finally going to get rid of that cop and his porch people. Today's the day." Followed by a series of gun emojis and smiley faces. She was cuffed before she could finish yelling, "I am the law in this neighborhood." The irony of her shouting that at actual law enforcement officers was not lost on anyone present. Patricia was indicted on multiple counts. Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, 2 counts. Attempted murder, 2 counts. Criminal harassment spanning 6 months. And my personal favorite, impersonating a law enforcement officer because she had been wearing a fake badge that said HOA Enforcement Division. At trial, her defense attorney tried to blame HOA stress and claimed she was suffering from a newly invented condition called Neighborhood Authority Syndrome. The jury took 11 minutes to convict on all charges. She was sentenced to 22 years in state prison with no possibility of parole. She's now serving her time in a facility with 0 HOA privileges. Her bunkmate, I'm told, reportedly has a makeshift porch swing made from bedsheets. The HOA board was dissolved within days of her arrest. Pine Ridge Estates was unincorporated within the month, and we now govern ourselves like reasonable adults. During the trial, more disturbing details emerged. Patricia had a notebook labeled enforcement ideas that included plans to install hidden cameras in neighbors' yards, hire actors to pose as code enforcement officers, and even poison plants that didn't meet her aesthetic standards. She had spent over $40,000 of HOA funds on surveillance equipment, legal consultations about how to make residents' lives miserable within the law, and a series of increasingly threatening form letters. The forensic accountant found she had embezzled another $60,000 for what she called HOA morale events that were just expensive dinners for herself. Her defense attorney, clearly grasping at straws, brought in a psychiatrist who testified about suburban power syndrome and the intoxicating effects of minor authority. The prosecutor countered with our security footage 12 hours of Patricia's own surveillance videos showing her harassment campaign and testimony from 17 neighbors who described living in fear of her daily patrols. The mailman testified that she had filed false reports about him to get him reassigned because she didn't like his tattoos. Sarah recovered with a new scar and a story that makes her the most interesting person at teacher conferences. Grandpa Walter installed a 6-foot privacy fence he calls the Patricia repellent barrier lined with wind chimes and no soliciting signs written in Latin. As for me, I got a promotion and a book deal for a memoir titled Tactical Landscaping, How to Defend Your Suburb with Dignity. The judge ordered Patricia to pay $300,000 in restitution plus all legal fees. When the verdict was read, she stood there with her mouth hanging open, her perfect suburban facade finally cracking as she realized her HOA empire had crumbled and she was heading to prison for over 2 decades.